September is here, and that can only mean it is time for an Oktoberfest beer. And yes, Oktoberfest really is in September. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to one of my favourite times of the year. I absolutely adore Oktoberfest style beers, and as a result, this month is phenomenal. As I alluded to in the intro, yes, for those that don't know, Oktoberfest, despite the name, actually takes place almost entirely in September. It actually finishes on the first weekend of October, so depending on how that falls, that could be 1 or 2 days or up to 7. But anyway, it's a month-long thing, and the majority of it happens in September, so it's coming around pretty damn soon. Today I'm taking a look at this. This is Paulaner's Oktoberfest beer, and the reason I'm looking at this one first, and we'll get on to whether I'll do any more or not in a minute, is because this was my standout from last year. A lot of other people had said in previous years that the Hacker-Shaw was the best one, that the Hofbrau was the best one. Last year, Paulaner, in my opinion at least, absolutely nailed it, and I wanted to see if the same was true this year. Now, last year I reviewed all of the big 6 Oktoberfest beers, put them against each other and ranked them, and to be honest, it was a fantastic time, but it was an awful lot of beer drinking in a relatively short period of time to get them out for Oktoberfest. In addition to that, I then also reviewed that big little box that came in. There was 10 of them. Some of them were good, some of them definitely weren't, but look, this year I'm not doing it again, I don't think. I'm going to review this one because it was my favourite, and I will review any others that I basically stumble across in the wild. I'm not doing a bulk order for all of the Oktoberfest beers for review. Whether I get one later in the month for myself, different matter, but yes, this might be the only one. It may be just the start. We will find out very soon, but as with last year's, it looks exactly the same from Paulaner this year. It's a Paulaner Oktoberfest beer. This one comes in at 6% on the nose, which I think is the same as last year, but yeah, I'll put a message on screen if that's not correct. But yes, it's a fine looking thing. It's nothing too new visually to get excited about, but let's get it open, shall we? Pouring it into my handled glass, pint glass, whatever the... Yeah, you get the idea. The word Stein is what I was actually looking for, is not what this is. This is not a Stein because it doesn't hold a litre. So there you go. If you go to actual Oktoberfest, you will get a Stein. But if you just got one of these pint ones at home, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not one. In the glass then, absolutely doing the business. Nice straw, golden colour, big foamy white head on it. Looks the absolute business. It does look a little bit green on camera because of the blue lights behind me, but I assure you, from my perspective, it's just a beautiful golden, very lager-esque looking beer. Effectively, it is a lager, but it's a bit richer. It's going to be a bit more intensive, and well, it just looks the biz. I'm filming this on a Friday night after work, so I'm very, very much looking forward to this one. Aromas then. It's got that nice, big, rich, bready malt that we're always looking for in this style of beer. There is just a hint though. Something a little bit tinny, a little bit metallic. It's not an off note as such in this style, but it's in greater quantities than I remember from previous iterations. And there is a tiny, tiny hint of that nice kind of foresty meadow character hop that you get in this style of beer coming through, but it's very subdued, and I'll be honest, the nose on it is predominantly very sweet. So let's give it a go. Cheers. Happy Oktoberfest. Okay, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I have tried this year's Oktoberfest beer from Paulaner before today. I bought a box of them for a big family barbecue a couple of weekends ago, and I've had a fair few. And I'd actually considered not bringing it to the channel at all this year. I thought it was going to be the same as last year. What's worth talking about? And whilst at that barbecue, I was having a few of these, and I thought, you know what? This just isn't giving me the fizz. It isn't giving me that little bit of extra oomph, that just delicious balanced nature that I thought this was last year. But it was a different environment, people around, food going on. I was like, maybe it's just me, something I've eaten, you know, making it all a bit not quite right. And I'm sorry to say that that wasn't the case. It really isn't as good as last year. Now, there are many reasons why that can be the case, and a lot of them may be well out of Paulaner's control. They have very likely brewed this to the exact same recipe they have for years, but there are natural changes in ingredients every time you brew a beer, especially when you only brew it once a year, because you're not getting those incremental changes. You're getting a whole fresh new harvest from a different year for every ingredient that comes into this. The water should be pretty consistent, but everything else definitely has the capacity to vary, and well, yeah, this one certainly feels like it has. So what is it that makes it just that bit worse? Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a fantastic beer. I have no regrets, even after trying it, from buying a case full, knowing I'd have some left over after the barbecue, because, well, frankly, I just love this style of beer. But it is just a bit less thick, it's a bit less luxury, it's a little bit more bitter, in fact, than the previous, and that, well, is just not quite what I loved about last year's version. To try and do it some justice though, we'll do a proper top to bottom taste test so you can try and understand exactly what it is that I'm experiencing with this. So, right on the tip of the tongue, it's slightly tangy, that metallic note really there, really present straight away. It's not really bitter, it's not really sweet. There is a little bit of herbal kind of grassy hop like there was on the aroma, but again, it's really subtle. The hops not doing the welcoming party that I recall from previous years. Over the mid palate, you've got the nice sweet bready malt, you've got the quality water mineral profile that almost feels exactly the same as last year's, except for the fact that it just feels a bit less rich, a bit less intense. The body's not as good. It's splashier. It feels like somehow there's less of the actual grain in here. It's missing some of that grain character, that grain body, and whether that's just because the harvest was poor, whether that was just because they've used less of it, I don't know. Now, given the fact it's pretty much exactly the same ABV as last year, then you would have to assume they'd put the same amount of grain in it to get that out of it. But yeah, for some reason, it's just not quite doing it for me. Of course, other things can ferment, but let's be honest, do we really think Paulaner are putting additives into their Oktoberfest beer? I don't think so. Onto the back of the tongue then. The carbonation seems to burst on the back of the tongue. It feels pretty flat up until that point, and some more hop note comes in, but it's not the nice, delicate German stuff that we know and love from this style. It's much more, well, damp and bitter. It's not full of flavour, it's just a bit of a dulling edge, and that bitterness just takes away all of that lovely malt sweetness that you did have from before. It's a really weird one, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but I'll be honest, the hops feel cheaper at that point, and again, that could be a harvest issue, not necessarily that they've cut corners, but it is just a little bit of a disappointment. So then, the aftertaste. That bitterness continues, it finally washes away. There's a tiny residual bit of malt sweetness in there, and that's really it. It's become imbalanced. Before, the balance is really what sold it off. It was nice, it was hoppy, it was sweet, it had some bitterness to keep it just on a level, and now, for me anyway, it's gone the other way. It feels more like a Pilsner than it ever has in the past, and that really isn't what an Oktoberfest beer is all about. Now, will this be the same for everyone? Last year, I had bottles imported from Germany and bottles made for the UK market. It all came from Germany, but some were for German stock and some were to be sold specifically in the UK. I couldn't tell any noticeable difference between the two. They did have different production dates on them, but other than that, they seem to be pretty much identical. This one is a for UK sale bottle, so it's not a German import in the, I guess, the obscure sense that I'm using it. It is imported from Germany, but for sale here. It's not for sale in Germany. And I do wonder if maybe there is a bit more of a difference this year, because people were asking me, is there a difference? They had said in previous years they thought there was, and maybe last year we just got lucky and got all of the good stuff all of the time. And well, I can't imagine them changing the recipe just for the UK. Now, if they were going to do that, I could kind of understand why, because now, today, sat here, this feels like a very good but generic lager, which is a bit of a fine line to tread. The flip side to that though is that a generic lager is likely to appeal to more people, to sell more of in the UK than the specific Oktoberfest type. But I'll be honest, I don't believe that at all. I genuinely think this is likely to be just a result of the condition of the crops, of the harvest and everything else that went into it, and maybe it just isn't quite there. But it is a bit of a shame. Have you tried this one yet this year? Did you think it was as good as last year or not? Please let me know in the comments. And have you tried any other of the official Oktoberfest beers this year, and how did they stack up to the previous versions? I would also very much like to know. But to be honest with you, that's all I've got to say. If you bought this already, do not fear. It's not terrible. It's just not what we were gifted last year, which was absolutely sublime. And to be honest with you, that is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.